Shikues të nderuar, përshëndetje, mirë se erdhët në kontekst. Sonte nëpërmjet dy bisedave do t'japim pak më shumë kontekst për disa prej temave kryesore aktuale politike. Kam kënaqësinë të paralajmëroj dhe të konfirmoj që në pjesën e parë do të kemi intervistë ekskluzive me ambasadorin e Shteteve të Bashkuara të Amerikës në Kosovë, Hovenier, i cili është në fundin e mandatit tij pas përpjekjeve dhe angazhimit të tij edhe të mëhershëm, edhe tani si ambasador në Kosovë. Flasim për situatën aktuale politike në vend, duke u fokusuar në një 3-4 shtylla ose 3-4 tema kryesore. I pari është kuptohet incidenti në Varag dhe ajo që ndodhi në kanalin e Iber Lepencit, i quajtur si incidenti të tmerrshëm, i quajtur si sulmi i cili ka rrezikuar jo vetëm furnizimin me ujë, por ka mundur të rrezikojë edhe shumë më shumë edhe jetën normale të qytetarëve në Kosovë, një prej incidenteve më të rënda të kohëve të fundit. Flasim për marrëdhënien ndërmjet Shteteve të Bashkuara të Amerikës dhe Kosovës nga 2-3 këndvështrime. I pari, nëse ushtarët Amerikanë të këforit, të cilë janë duke shërbyer në Kosovë, e cilësojnë Kosovën vend më të rrezikshëm për të shërbyer se sa që e kanë cilësuar në të kaluarën, dhe nëse e kanë edhe matutje të njëjtin përkushtim dhe të njëjtin angazhim për të mbrojtur Kosovën si pjesë e trupave të këforit, gjë që e bëjnë që nga viti 1999. Pashmangshëm është me ambasadorin të flasim edhe për dialogun Kosovë-Serbi. Kuptohet do të trajtojmë mënyrën se si këtu e tutje mund vazhdoj dialogu në kohën kur ka gati pajtueshmëri të gjithëve që deri në pranverën e ardhshme nuk mund të ndodhë asgjë e madhe në dialog, pa çka që javën e ardhshme është i konfirmuar takimi në nivel të kryenegociatorëve. Situata tjetër që e trajtojmë me ambasadorin kuptohet është situata aktuale politike në Kosovë. Vendi do të shkojnë në zgjedhje në shkurt, kurse të gjithë, i madh dhe i vogël, pajtohen se qysh tani jemi në fushat. Në pjesën e dytë të emisionit, si pjesë e bashkëpunimit ton me D+-in, merremi me barën administrative dhe mënyrën se si krejt seti i kërkesave administrative dhe mënyra se si është ka operon shteti e ndikon në mënyrën se si bizniset janë ka punojnë, por edhe nëse digitalizimi do t'u lehtëson të jetën jo veç bizniseve edhe qytetarëve. Pas pak në dy pjesë të ndara i kemi këto dy segmente të paralajmëruara, por minutat e parë i kom për veti. Qeni teme mirë, veprimet simbolike. Tash këto dikush e cilëson vandalizëm, dikush dëmtim të pronës publike, leni ato fore. Veprim simbolik është qenjeri.
Imazhi për të çdo pamje është e rëndësishme për mbajtja dhe ajo çfarë përmban veprimi im. Në këtë rast kjo ka të bëjë me ndalimin e aprovimit të planeve dhe projekteve që e ngulfasin zhvillimin e qytetit, të cilat zonat e gjelbra dhe tokat bujqësore i kthejnë në zona ekonomike, e krejt kjo për favore të oligarkëve të ndryshëm, edhe si mjet kusuritje për financim të fushatave zgjedhore që të zgjedhjeve të cilat janë para nesh.
Këshyre, ai veprim është simbolik, veç nëse e krahason me gaz lëcjellës ose molotov ose zull, e krejt këto janë përdorën kuvend ose ndaj kuvendit. Mirë po, për te ati veprimi Giza ma dha një ide interesante. Sa mundet ky vend me duru banesa kur s'do të ketë më banor? Sepse nëse jalshon një sy të dhënave të agjencisë statistikave, edhe i krahason me pohime edhe të dhënat komunave, vrehet një anomalie madhe. Shumica e komunave të Kosovës i kanë 30 deri në 40% të shtëpive ose banesave të pa banuara. Edhe njëherë, 3 ose 4 në çdo 10 shtëpi o banesa në Kosovë nuk janë të banuara. Kushte normale, kjo s'kish me qenë lajm. Veç kishim konstatu letë që veni është ka zbrazet, njerëzit janë ka lëshojnë Kosovën dhe janë ka i lënë shtëpit. Mirë po, këtu qytetet janë ka rritën për pjetë. Në Ferizaj, për shembull, dosti jonë Fis Qerkini thotë që s'ka pozit në atë komunë për i cilës nuk i shet 10 krana ndërtimi. Për ta ilustru sa keq është puna në Ferizaj, po a jap do fakte. E para, komuna e ka rrejt auditorin, kur i ka paraqit dhënat për leje ndërtimore. E dyta, komuna s'ka hartë zonalit miratuar. E treta, veç nga viti 2022, janë bartë mbi 800.000 euro borxhe për leje ndërtimore, që komuna i ka lëshu e nuk i ka inkasu. Me fjalë tjera, masakra urbane ka emër. Në Prizren, nëse interesuash pse po ndërtohet kur nuk ka banor, kryetari e pranën që s'ka shumë sens. Ka ndaj logjike nëse ne treta e shtëpive janë të pabanuara mu lëshu leje për qindra mijë metra katror.
Ta shikoni në bazë të hartave zonale, janë përcaktuar me pjesë e qytetit, pjesë të territorit komunës ku lejohet ndërtimi. Edhe nëse një biznes e bën një kërkesë për ndërtim, edhe i plotson kushtet ligjore, nuk ka logjik çysh duhet me anal atë leje, çysh mos me dhon atë leje. Për shkak se derisa ato banesa shiten, domethënë ka blers. Kush i blen këto banesa? Unë kam identifikuar bashkë me ekipin tim një trend ku mërgjimtarët tanë nuk po ndërtojnë më shtëpia, po po blejnë banesa.
Edhe që kjo është shpjegimi jo veç i shaqirtota, ato është shpjegim logjik i kësaj që ka po ndodhur. Po, kampion i sfidimit të kësaj logjike është Gjilani. Po e dini, a i veni që ka met pa stadium, pa autostrad, pa rrugë, ama ndërtesat reja. Veç si vjetë, në Gjilani janë lëshu leje për gati 200.000 metra katror, a gati 40% e shpive edhe banesave janë të pabanuara. Tash, për Prishtinë e Fushë-Kosovë nuk po flasë, sepse këto dukurin, këto komuna e para nuk janë të reja, e dyta aty ka gravitim të njerëzve nga të tërë Kosova, nuk ka veç migrim brenda komunal. Për ma tepër vetëvendosja po pohon që pikërisht për këtë arsye, po e kundërshton planin zhvillimor komunal të Prishtinës, me që sipas tyre, plani parashe që edhe ma shumë ndërtime të larta të bëhen në toka që aktualisht e kanë statusin e tokës bujqësore. Ku është logjika? Qysh me e mata është ka zbrazët Kosova, edhe pse janë ka rritën katët, kur nuk janë ka shtohen banorët. Qyre, për shembull me e matë me numër të gazetarëve, jo që s'kemi munges, po kur ma tepër e ma shumë s'kemi pas. Ani para zgjedhjeve, kanë mu hap do portale me ka 2 laptopa për një kuzhine, kemi mu kënaq. Me matë me numër të mjekve, për shembull kjo është dosh me qenë parametr. Nëse e lexon odën e mjekve, ato që thonë publikisht është që qindra mjeke kanë braktisë Kosovën, edhe personeli shëndetësor ka braktisë këtë vend vazhdimisht, edhe ka mungesë të mjekve në disa segmente vitale, për shembull për anesteziolog ka krizë me vite. Mirë, po nëse ngon Ministrinë e Shëndetësisë,
sa i përket ikjes së mjekëve, po e përsëris. Hera e parë është viti 2024 nga trendi që ka filluar shumë vite më herët, që më shumë mjek shqiptar po kthehen në Republikën e Kosovës se sa që po dalin. Vetëm për një ilustrim, deri në shtator, ashtu si shtash, janë rreth 82 mjek që kanë dalë jashtë Kosovës dhe janë mbi 156 shqiptar që janë kthyer.
Pra as mjekve nuk ju zihet bes, njeri po thot po shkojnë, tjetri po thot po kthehen. Kuptohet, edhe këta që po shkojnë e kanë gabim, sepse as Evropa s'është mo çka ka qenë, nuk është Evropa e viteve të 90-ta, e që besa ase fillimit të këtij shekulli. Kuptohet, këto s'janë fjalë të mia, janë fjalë të kryeministrit të Kosovës Albin Kurti, i cili vazhdon të insistojë që Kosova është vend i jetueshëm dhe i lezetshëm.
Konkretisht ekonomia e Kosovës, rritja ekonomike, demokracia e Kosovës, progresi demokratik, është i tillë që tregon se ky vend ja vlen fort të jetosh, të banosh e të punosh në të e për të.
Tash, kur këtyne llojeve ja shton edhe faktin që një pjesë të asoj që citova më herët, jo kësaj që e transmetuam në video, e ka thënë në një ligjërat në student në kolegji privat Amerikan në Kosovë, petini dhe vetë sa me i marë seriozisht. Por, për që ja vlen me jetu në Kosovë është ka e përmend vazhdimisht kryeministri, kurse për që ja vlen që parat e diasporës të tërhiqen në Kosovë, po e thonë kryetarët e komunave dhe biznismen. Pra, për te matjeve të cilat janë ka i bëjnë individualisht, na duhet mbështetemi në shifra edhe fakte të ASK-s edhe të komunave. Nëse mbështetemi në këto shifra dhe fakte, konstatojmë se njerëz ka ma pak, metri katror është ma shtrajt, uj ka ma pak, rryma është ma shtrajt, kurse komunat janë kalëshojnë leje për miliona metra katror banesa të reja. Partit, muajve të funit janë ka merën shumë ma shumë me diaspor se sa me Kosovë, Statistika të regojnë që 10 mijëra njerëz e kanë lëshu Kosovën me viza pune, para liberalizimit vizave unë ka flasë. Edhe nëse ky trend vazhdon, s'kemi me pas nevojë bre as për rrugë, as për ujësjellës, as për shkolla, sepse ky vend s'ka me pas njerëz. Tash edhe letrat jon ka tregojnë ato që tereni e ka dëshmu që sa kohë. Nëse vazhdon ky trend, thjesht vendi do të met me shumë ma pak njerëz, s'ka nevojë as për porçe, as për sallat sporteve, edhe as për investime tjera publike. Për parandalimin e këtij trendi duhen veprime, ato veprime duhen të qenë shumë më shumë se sa simbolike. Pas pak intervista me ambasadorin amerikan Hovenier. Shikues të nderuar, ashtu si paralajmërova në hyrje të emisionit, në pjesën e parë do të zhvillojmë një intervistë me ambasadorin e Shteteve të Bashkuara në Kosovë, Hovenier, i cili është sërish në studion tonë dhe flasim për disa prej ngjarjeve aktuale dhe kuptohet disa prej temave që na bartën në ndër vitet dhe kanë qenë tema gjatë mandatit të tij. Thank you. Welcome to our studios.
It's a pleasure to be here again.
Lately, we have been discussing one big topic, that's north of Kosovo, but we have had one incident which really sent shockwaves through political world and not only. I'm talking about, of course, the incident in Vaga and in the water channel. Do we know, or what do we know so far?
Well, first, I appreciate you asking me about it, and I want to take this opportunity to repeat what I said on the evening of the event. You know, and the U.S. government has said afterwards as well. We completely condemn this horrendous attack on critical infrastructure in Kosovo that had the potential to significantly upend lives and harm people, both ceasing electricity production for a certain percentage of citizens, affecting water supplies for a percentage of citizens. It's just an unjustified attack that makes no sense in the 21st century. With regard to what we know about what happened, it's still fairly early on, and as I said, I think last week, for the United States to be able to attribute responsibility, we have to have a fairly clear evidentiary package. We think that will come, but that's not yet. So there's an investigation going on. It's being carried out by Kosovan authorities. The United States government offered the evening of the attack and since as well to Kosovan authorities U.S. law enforcement support. I believe my European colleagues have done the same. U.S. officials are working with Kosovan counterparts to try to conduct an investigation, an effective investigation. We believe it needs to be credible, rapid, fair, transparent, and of course it is the U.S. government view that we've already expressed very strongly that those responsible for this attack must be held accountable. We are not in a position to say who is responsible at this time.
Now, it is, I am sure you've seen political statements. I am sure you have seen statements from various Kosovo officials linking this with Serbia and Russia and other actors. But what I'm interested in is, has there been a new evaluation? Is there a new way of evaluating how dangerous is north of Kosovo for U.S. soldiers? Are we speaking about a highly dangerous territory right now?
Yeah, so just on that, the first point you made first, I would just say the U.S. government isn't in a position to say who is responsible.
This is why I wanted to make that distinction clear.
That the government of Kosovo has. Our advice continues to be, wait till you have an investigation and have credible results of investigation before you ascribe responsibility, because then you will have support from everyone in ensuring those responsible are held accountable. On the question of how dangerous is the north of Kosovo, I would just say this, particularly for American soldiers.
Yeah.
U.S. soldiers have been operating throughout Kosovo since 1999. KFOR has very good security protocols. They do operate in conditions of security, and of course KFOR helps create its own security. So we don't have a particular concern about the conditions in which KFOR soldiers are operating, other than we always want them to be operating in a condition that is as safe as possible. I will note that the U.S. government, in our advice to U.S. citizens, in our travel advisory, you can go online and look at it, we do differentiate the north of Kosovo from the rest of the country in our advice to U.S. citizens more broadly. We tell American citizens to reconsider travel to Leposavic, North Mitrovica, Zvečan, or Zubin Potok because of the possibility of civil unrest. If embassy personnel are going to go there, they have to actually have my permission. We do go, and we're there. We work with people. It's important for us to understand the area, but we do think there's a greater risk in the north of Kosovo for civil unrest than in other parts of the country.
Is there any connection between Vaga and Banjska?
Right now I'm not aware of any because the investigation is still very, very early. It's not a good idea to speculate about that. I would say both incidents represent an unacceptable threat to the people of Kosovo, to the Republic of Kosovo.
And the incidents in north of Kosovo have pushed even more into the public discourse the idea that Kosovo must get some sort of fast track to NATO membership or some sort of affiliation with NATO bodies. Has that politically come up? Is that anything through diplomatic channels that has been any progress made from the, let's say, last interview that we had?
So I think those who make that case have some misunderstandings of what NATO membership means and what it doesn't mean, and maybe taking more for granted than I might like a substantial NATO commitment already to Kosovo. So just on the security situation in Kosovo. Kosovo right now enjoys protection and support from NATO that very few countries in the world enjoy. KFOR, NATO's Kosovo force, is the largest NATO deployment outside of the NATO area. You have over 4,000 soldiers under a NATO command who are here to do two things: ensure a safe and secure environment and ensure freedom of movement. And they take that mission very seriously. So when people worry about potential incursions or threats, there are very few countries in the world that have the might of NATO, including several hundred American soldiers here to provide that protection and that support. I hope that the people of Kosovo appreciate that and understand just how important and how meaningful that is. So I don't lose a lot of sleep, and I hope people of Kosovo don't lose a lot of sleep. I've said this before about the security threats while we know we have NATO's largest mission outside of the NATO area here right now. On the question of a faster track for NATO membership.
Because, you know, it's been interpreted as more of a process of political will rather than ticks in the boxes.
Well, I have worked on NATO enlargement throughout my career on a couple of occasions. I assure you there's nothing remotely like ticking boxes with regard to assessing countries' readiness and countries making the political commitments and the allies making political commitments for membership. And remember, as we just saw with Sweden and with Finland, to become a member of NATO, the parliaments of all of the other NATO countries have to vote in favor of that. They have to believe that your military is prepared, but they also have to believe that you're ready to enter into the political commitments associated with alliance membership. So in the case of Kosovo, the U.S. position is clear. We do see Kosovo as a member of NATO in the future. We support that and support it strongly. We'd like to see it advance. There are members of NATO that don't have that view right now. We believe the best way to show them this is the right way forward is to address their concerns. Some of their concerns have to do with the nature of Kosovo's relationship with Serbia. So that's why we put such an effort into supporting the EU-facilitated dialogue to help arrive at a different relationship, a repositioned relationship between Kosovo and Serbia that addresses some of the concerns of member states of NATO who have not recognized Kosovo or have other concerns. So that means some patience is required. It means some hard work is required. But there's no fast track of just you're facing a threat, therefore you should become a NATO member. That's just simply not how it works. We are looking for progress in the dialogue. We are looking for further progress in reform. We're proud of support we're giving to the Kosovo Security Force, the KSF, but it's on year 6 of a 10-year plan to transition to a NATO interoperable, multi-ethnic force with a territorial defense mission, capable of carrying out that mission, that is subject to civilian control. In all those areas I just laid out, there's been real progress made, and there's important progress still to be achieved. But leaving aside the military side, on the political side, allies have to believe that Kosovo is prepared to share the commitments of an ally in the alliance. And that means hard political work. It means reform. It means making progress on things that allies have identified that are important to them. And in the case of Kosovo, that does include progress on implementation of commitments made in the dialogue.
I'll get back to dialogue later, but as long as we're speaking about Kosovo-US relations, the elections in US concluded, so now we do know most of the key people in the new Trump administration. On the other hand, Kosovo will have elections in February. Do we expect any changes in US policy towards Kosovo with the return of Mr. Trump in the White House?
Well, I would say this. The American people have consistently supported the people of Kosovo. They did before the 1999 crisis. They certainly did after the 1999 crisis, and they certainly have since 2008 as well, when the United States was among the very first countries to recognize Kosovo's independence. And of course, we played an important role in supporting the process that achieved Kosovo's independence. And that is, I think, something from the American people without regard to which party or person is in power at any given moment. Inevitably, whenever a new U.S. administration takes office, they look at outstanding issues and they do some policy reviews. So it would not be uncommon for the Trump administration to take some different perspectives on some of the policy issues than the Biden administration has. I can't speak to them as the U.S. ambassador here now. I can't speak to what the next administration will or won't do. I can say that I think the thing that's most important for Kosovo to do is to show its readiness to be responsive to its friends and partners, including the United States, in responding to some of the specific things we've asked. And that brings me back to the dialogue and the need. We got a pretty good agreement last year in Brussels, and then the implementation annex in Ohrid. We hope to see from both Kosovo and Serbia equally much more renewed energy spent on implementing obligations entered into there.
But almost nobody expects anything from the dialogue till at least spring because of the elections in Kosovo, and which leads me to believe that first US and the EU have to do something to ensure that we will have no further escalations, especially in the north.
Well, I would hope that you would phrase that in a slightly different way, because I think the responsibility does not lie with the United States or the European Union. The responsibility lies with Kosovo and with Serbia.
Understood. Not that I implied that it is your responsibility.
I understand, but I would hope that the people of Kosovo and the people of Serbia would say, this is our responsibility. Now, the United States is here to help and support, and as far as I can tell, so is the EU. So you have new EU leadership. They just began their initial round of meetings with counterparts in the last week or two. I can't speak for the European Union, but it's clear there is a renewed energy and interest in enlargement. The United States supports that. It's clear the European Union has brought forward a really important initiative, the Growth Plan, that offers enormous opportunities for Kosovo to help incentivize and ensure successful reforms. I can say the United States as well will continue to do what we can to support stability, security, and prosperity in this region. How that will look is harder for me to say right now.
And Prime Minister recently came up with another interpretation. He said that it is not up to the government to associate municipalities among themselves. It should come from bottom up, and municipalities should start the process of associating themselves. Is this an attempt to buy more time till new elections in the northern municipalities, or a way to just avoid the implementation of Ohrid and Brussels?
It's usually unwise for an ambassador to spend time speculating about the motivations of elected officials. So I'm not going to do that. I will just lay out
Here is me thinking you will make the slip in the last days of your mandate.
But I will speak to what the U.S. position is, and that's been quite clear, and it hasn't changed. We believe Kosovo entered into a commitment much earlier in the dialogue process, among other things, to establish an association of Serb majority municipalities.
Yes.
This administration has been extremely clear that we recognize the concerns that, if not done in the right way, an association of Serb majority municipalities could impede the good functioning of the Kosovan state, and we do not want that. So we've been quite clear that an association of Serb majority municipalities should not have executive authorities. It should not be a Republika Srpska or Republika Srpska-like entity. It should not require any changes to Kosovo's constitution as it currently exists. It should be a mechanism by which these municipalities coordinate among themselves of how they will exercise the functions they already have under your constitution, things like education, healthcare, zoning, land use, economic development, things like that. We do expect the government of Kosovo to move forward with that. Our current ask has been, since there's a good draft statute provided by the European Union that the United States supports, and so did Germany, France, and Italy at a very senior level, but the entire Union did as well. Since there's this question of whether it complies with the Constitution or not, we believe there's a really easy way to find out the answer, which is to submit it to the Constitutional Court. And when Kosovo takes that step, it's already received commitments from its partners that a number of positive things will start happening for Kosovo. My hope is the government of Kosovo will take that advice and put it into action.
Two more questions. You visited Disicon today, and there are researchers claiming that disinformation, mostly originating from Russia, is at an all-time high. To make matters more interesting, our government claims that the media is engaged in hybrid warfare, whatever that may mean. But my idea is Balkans being viewed as a potential security threat for Europe, or there are larger issues to deal with?
It's a complicated question. What I would say is if you are a European, be you a European from the Balkans or a European from other parts of Europe, you do have to acknowledge that in the last generation or two, the Balkans have been more of a source of instability than stability for Europe. We want to change that. We want to see this region, and we've seen enormous progress, but we want to see this region stable, secure, prosperous. I want to see the young people of Kosovo that I talk to all the time having confidence in their future here. So disinformation gets in the way of all that. There is active efforts to use the information space to advance narratives or to divide people or to complicate this very process we hope to see, which is, in the case of Kosovo, seeing Kosovo as a state move closer to its integration into Europe, into the European Union, into NATO, into these other institutions. That's why it's so important that we work hard together to combat this misinformation and these efforts to divide and separate people rather than have you come together for common interests and common good.
And the last one, we have elections coming up. I said parties are almost at full swing in the campaign. Two things Kosovo is especially proud of is the transition of power, which has been done regularly and peacefully and democratically, and the participation of Serbs in the elections. How important, how vital do you think it is to maintain these two trends in the February 9th upcoming elections?
I mean, I think you know my answer. Both trends are important. So the peaceful transition of power, that's what democracies do. And Kosovo has every reason to be proud of its track record since independence of running effective elections, of the machinery of elections working reasonably well, quite well in most cases, and the reality of having the voices of the people reflected in the results. That's very positive. You also raised the sensitive issue of Serb participation in the elections, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk about this for a minute. We believe strongly, and I hope all the people of Kosovo agree with us, that the ethnic Serb community is an integral part of the society of Kosovo. And that, of course, we would want them to use the democratic instruments in the Constitution, in Kosovo's laws, to address the concerns they have. So our hope very much remains that the ethnic Serb community will participate in these elections and be part of choosing who will represent them in the state institutions and structures to help ensure that their interests are best protected. And while I'm on that, let me spend just a second on the situation in the Assembly this last week. I thought that was unfortunate all around. No one came out looking good. It's unfortunate if a session of the Assembly is suspended for what appears to be an effort not to allow elected representatives to carry out their functions. On the other hand, it's also very unfortunate that elected representatives who were there to promote the interests and advance the interests of their people choose not to exercise those rights. That's also, it's not the promise of democracy we'd hope to see. Certainly in the Ahtisaari time when we were negotiating the provisions for set-aside seats for minority representatives in the parliament, the hope would be, the expectation was that they would use that capacity, their role as members of the parliament, to affirmatively address the concerns of their community and advance them. So I found the whole thing to be unfortunate.
And I know that your last days of the mandate are some of the busiest, so I thank you very much for being at our studios and giving us the pleasure of this interview. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be with you again. Thanks.
Shikues të nderuar, biseduam me ambasadorin e Shtetit të Bashkuar në Kosovë, Hovenier. Vazhdojmë pas pak me pjesën e dytë të emisionit me temat që i paralajmërova në hyrje.